Hi, this is Grandmaster Daniel Gormally, and this is Better Chess Training.
Hey guys, today we have a special guest. I'm going to be interviewing Grandmaster Danny Gormally. We're going to be talking about his new book, Sharp Middle Games, Practical Guide to Chess Calculation. Well, we talk about some other topics about chess training and chess improvement. So enjoy the interview. Okay, I've got Grandmaster Daniel Gormally here from
Right.
England, and
Mm.
as you know, I just did a review of his ebook, Sharp Middle Games, A Practical Guide to Chess Calculation, and he was gracious enough to come on the channel, and we're just going to have a little conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and I got a few questions for Grandmaster Gormally, so let's get started. Tell us about how you came to write the ebook for Chessable. I know you did a little intro video for it, but tell us how that process went and what went into the book.
Well, basically, I was babysitting this cat for Simon Williams. You know Simon Williams? It's like an English grandmaster. I was
Yes.
looking for this cat. It's quite a funny story. It's kind of like a feral cat, and it kept going missing. I don't really like me very much. But so I went up anyway. While I was there, I went to Battersea in London to do a simul. And while I was at the simul, I was chatting to this guy called Leon Watson, who's connected to Chessable.
Hmm?
And he said, "Why don't you come and do a course for Chessable?" So originally the plan was to do this course on this Caruana variation. But then I, I was told that somebody else was doing it. This guy's, is it Zalecki or?
Yeah, Christoph Silecki. Yep.
Yeah. So then I thought, well, what's my strength? My strength is probably calculation, middle game sort of thing. So I wanted to do something. And I'd already done a similar course for another company, um, iChess. I want to do a similar course because I was already thinking along those lines. So I thought, let's do sharp middle games, and actually required a lot more work than I thought it would.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed that in some of I've like I mentioned to you offline. I read your other book, Grandmaster, Calculate Like a Grandmaster,
That's
and
right.
it seems like you enjoy kind of more concrete calculation in chess as opposed to maybe more of a. I guess I shouldn't.
Yeah,
Players like Kasparov and Tal seem to be. Would you say they're
yeah.
favorites of yours, or?
I think that's a good point actually because I saw something, because when you talk in terms of strategy, you talk about players like Botvinnik, Petrosian. It's something that I've always struggled with, like Karpov, the way he views chess.
Hmm.
That's something I've always struggled with. When I was growing up, how did I get good at chess? I'd look in a magazine and I'd see a beautiful tactic. I was thinking about this on the bus earlier and I was thinking, part of the criticism of the course has been, oh, it's too difficult for some players. And I thought, one of the reasons I got good was because I used to have this puzzle book and it used to have really difficult puzzles in there,
Uh-huh.
which I used to look at when I was younger. And that's how I got good, really. And I think, it should be like that. It should be like difficult. And I think that's a challenge, it's like a sharp tactical position with lots of pieces flying around. I see that as a challenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think sometimes for amateur players and maybe some stronger players too, there's a feeling that if you understand, say, positional play, that you can magically create this plan without having to calculate much. And not that any author has said that, but I think a lot of players feel that way, or maybe they're just too lazy to calculate during their games. And so I think
Yeah.
your book, because one of your conversations in the forums brought that about, that when you get to a certain level, you need to calculate and you need to be more concrete about your calculations. And as I mentioned in my review, that's an area of my chess that I want to play. And of course, I'm much lower rated, but I think a lot of players listening to this are going to be more towards my rating than your rating. So I think it's something to move to that next
Yeah.
level. They're going to need to learn to
I
calculate.
think the thing is, Brian, it's like, can you really separate? Because, there's a famous saying in chess, chess is 99% tactics. And I think the reason, I mean, even though that's wrong, the reasoning behind that is kind of like you can't escape having to calculate. You know, even these players I mentioned earlier, like Petrosian and Karpov, they were very good calculators. You know, they really knew how they had us, but maybe they weren't. You know, maybe they weren't as good in murky positions as Kasparov. They didn't have the same intuition for. You know, navigating your way through sharp position isn't purely about calculation. It's also about instinct and you know, so on. So it's kind of, yeah, it's calculation is very important. Though. You know, you can't play at a high level unless you can calculate really well.
So would you say your book will help students to develop that? I want to say you mentioned intuition, but you also mentioned calculation. So it's really not two. They're not really diametrically opposed, as I think some players may believe they are.
I think they're kind of combined because I mentioned in the book how you know, you get a certain position. When you first look at a position, what do you think about? And your first intuition is often correct. But the question is, calculation is there to back up your intuition. So you look at a move and you think, hang on, that looks like the right move. You know, I calculate. So then I start the process calculation. And, you know, I talk about in the book how, you know, players often make the mistake of cutting off their calculation too quick.
Right.
Like they become lazy with it. And when you tend to analyse with the stronger players, you realise that they keep looking, you know, they keep trying to look that little bit further. And sometimes, you know, I've analysed with some of these guys and you're like, look at it. Why do you keep analysing this position? Because, you know, you've already gone far it up. I'm quite a lazy person, you know. Like, you know, that'll do. And he's like, oh, no, I want to look a little bit further. I'm like, you know, come on, man, you know, I want these guys. I'm going to go down the rest, get some food, you know.
Yeah. So getting to the some of the examples you use, and we won't have the board in front of us, but hopefully you can remember. So some of the games are your own, and some of them you've chosen a few. How did you pick the material? Because I noticed they're unique games from your other work. It's not like you've repeated any of the games. How do you come about picking the games that you did pick for the book?
Well, I find a lot of the games in there are from my own games because I think you like the thought process you go through in your own games are so important. You can think about the psychological, you know, what led you to play that move. And the thing is, when you're looking at other people's games, you can only really try and recreate that. I always think, like, if you're a coach or if you're a commentator on the game, you know, I've said this before, it's a massive advantage to be an active player, you know, to be somebody who's playing all the time rather than somebody who's, say, you know, essentially a retired player, which a lot of commentators are. I don't, I mean, you know, fair play to them. I don't know how they do it because I just think, you know, your own games. That's what I would say to people, you know, analyse your own games. But yeah, as far as the other games are concerned, it tends to be a lot of times I was looking at games, either from tournaments, you know, that I've seen recently, games that I've seen recently. Like, for example, there's a Magnus Carlsen versus Caruana is a game from that. I know everyone's probably seen that game, but I was just judging it on a certain aspect, like the Matthew Sadler did some YouTube videos about Alpha Zero, so I thought that's interesting. Let's try and take that a little bit further. You see what I'm saying? And also, yeah, go back to my own games. Yeah, I mean, for example, I played a game against Peter Lecco. Now, you know, and we had a post-mortem afterwards. Now, obviously, that massive, you know, you suddenly realise actually, you know, these guys are playing at a high level because they've seen a lot more than you are. That's very revealing, you know. Yeah, so I think, yeah.
Oh no, so that happens. I know that always happens to me when I'm playing higher rated players. So that happens to you two at your level.
Oh well, yeah, I mean, you think, well, why is Peter Lecco? Why did the guy play a match for championships? Well, because he's got much better understanding than I have, and he just sees, you know, ideas and moves in the game that I don't see. And I think a lot of that is actually down to calculation. You know, we would calculate a certain line, it's going boom, 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 boom. I was like, well, I didn't see any of that.
Right.
You know, and, you know, so that's what I think, well, you know, if you really want to get a high level in chess, you've got to be willing to stretch yourself.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that in the book quite a bit, actually, about looking at moves that maybe look a little silly at first, and even if it doesn't work out, it's important to go over that. So, with that in mind, a quick question. So, you mentioned so analyzing your own games is very important, and my question for you, which I've talked to a few masters along the way about, is at what point in so let's say you play a game at a tournament or whatnot, and then you go home. Now, the answer might be different for you. So, kind of answer for yourself, and maybe answer for what you would recommend to a, say, an 1800 player. Okay, at what point do you look at the game and annotate it with your thoughts, and then at what point do you say use a chess engine to help check your analysis?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I mean, it depends really on my mood, you know. Like, sometimes, you know, if you're in the middle of a tournament, I mean, a lot of tournaments now, for example, I'm playing a tournament this weekend, and it's 7 games in 4 days. So it's a very tough schedule, you know, and you think, well, you're not going to analyse all of those games very conscientiously. Yeah, I tend to find, I've said this before, Brian, you know, like a few years ago, I was getting to a point where the quality of my analysis was really poor because I think, you know, I was too over dependent on an engine. You know, and I'd forgotten how to analyse myself, you know. So that was fine in the opening part of the game, you know, when I was preparing, I'd sort of prepare with an engine and so on. But when I actually had to think for myself, I was like, you know, I don't really know what to do. There's no engine here to help me.
Right.
Yeah, unless I'm in the toilets and get out the smartphone, then I'm
Well, yeah, now everyone's got an engine everywhere, which is why they don't allow, at least here, a lot of the major tournaments in the United States, they don't allow you to have your phone on you.
One of the things I never understand is why they allow people to have their phone in front of them. Like they go, oh, you turn off your phone, you can have your phone on the table. Like, well,
yeah.
You know,
well, now they have the smart watches too. Soon they're going to have the glass. They're going to have it in our glasses so that you can see the computer analysis in your glass lenses. So we're really going to have to.
I'm a little suspicious of you there with your glasses, mate. Yeah.
There you go. Well, that happened to me at a tournament recently. There was a big sign that said, "If your phone goes off during a game, you lose the game." And it was a final round, and one of the top table. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't one of the leaders. It wasn't one of the grandmasters, but it was kind of one of the. He was probably there were probably 60 players in my section. It was the open section, and he was probably fighting for, you know, 5th or 6th place, and his phone went off. And he actually was quite a gentleman about it. He the other player kind of ignored it, and he didn't claim anything. He was going to keep playing, but then he stood up, he shook his hand, and then he walked off. And I thought, well, that was, you know, interesting. But I guess nowadays with the potential for or even the suspicion of cheating, the tournament organizers are.
There's a lot more of it that goes on than you realise. But I mean, I actually, my phone went off a couple of times during games, and I won't mention the first time, but well, I mean, I don't take my phone to games now because basically I turned the phone off and it went off because somehow it'd gone onto the answer phone, and the guy had rang me to give me a good luck, ironically, to give me a good luck message.
Oh.
And yeah, I basically ran out. You know, I won the game, and really, I should have given the guy who I beat like some kind of, because he could have gone. You know, he could have put his hand on the arbiter.
Right.
You know, play the game, but he didn't. And the second time it went off, I had a position where I had mate and free, and again, my opponent was very sporty, and he didn't call me. He could have called out. He could have. You know, there's a lot of people out there.
Right.
Yeah, going back to what you're saying about computers, yeah, I think computers are helpful, but I think you have to have your own element of analysing yourself, because you've got to realise that when you're playing, you know, a chess game with an engine, that engine is performing at a very, very high level.
Right.
But when you go into the board, suddenly, you know, if you're preparing with an engine and it's probably, you know, preparing you to 3,300 level, suddenly you go into the board and the level of your play is going to drop off.
Right.
Whoever you are. So you have to be aware of that. But I do think computers can be helpful, and I mentioned that in the book. Computers can be helpful for influencing your play, particularly in terms of finding unusual, because when you think about it, computers are just brute calculating machines.
Yes. So
they would just look at any move. Whereas with humans, we're kind of shut off from that. We're kind of like, a lot of how many moves we look at depends on how we're feeling. Our mood, whether we're feeling lazy or we're feeling motivated. And we might only look at 2 or 3 moves and then, move on or just make a move. Whereas I think, and I mentioned this in the book, the candidate moves is very, very important. Having the ability to identify as many candidate moves as possible is very, very important.
Do you see that as a difference between a master level, international master, grandmaster level, and amateur players? Is that the not just the depth, but the breadth and the width of the calculations, that they're just not looking at enough candidate moves?
Yeah, I'll give you an interesting anecdote. I was playing Nigel Short in the European Union Championships in Liverpool, and this is going back quite a few years, probably about 10 years or so. And we analysed the game afterwards briefly. And he actually, I'm not even sure we got the board out. I think he was just quoting variations to the bar. But basically, he saw like these candidate moves I hadn't even seen. And I sort of like got the sense that he wasn't really, you feel like when you calculate really strong players, obviously Nigel played a match for the World Championship.
Right.
You feel like, you feel like the difference is that they just calculate like 30 moves ahead.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and I think a lot of amateur players have this misconception. They think, the reason this player is because he's calculating 30 moves ahead, and you simply do long calculations. I don't think that's true at all. I think the main reason why, because when I was analysing with Nigel Shaw, I got the sense he was just seeing more candidates.
Right.
And he knew what was going on in the first 4 to 5 moves of the position, in the short term. I think that's very important that you understand the short term tactics of the position.
Yes.
Because there's no point doing, really long calculations if you're blundering a piece in the first 2 or 3 moves.
Right. No, and I noticed that a lot in the book. A lot of the sub variations are used. The nice thing about Chessable, you can train them, so it's actually forcing the student to not just look at their own move, but look at, well, now if your opponent does this, how can you punish it? Or if you do this, how why is this candidate move not good? Because it gives your opponent too much counterplay. And what I like about the book, and I said this in my review, is that it forces us as students. This is one of the advantages versus a print book, is that you're forced to move the pieces on the computer screen at the very least. So I like that quite a bit, and I think maybe because the book resonated with me with my own personal weaknesses, but I don't think I'm much different than a lot of amateur players in terms of what they need to do to improve. So that's kind of why
actually, your point I think is a very valid one, because again, coming back to the experience of playing with strong players, I play with like Michael Adams, very, very objective player. So, being the top player in England for many, many years, and world-class player. But, one of the things you get a sense from when you analyse with him is how objective he is.
Yes.
He's solving the problems very easily, because he's not just looking for his own moves, he's looking at the whole board, he's looking at. And, I think that's a very important point that, amateur players often miss, I think, is, be aware of your own chances, but also you've got to train yourself to think, what is my opponent intending in this position?
Yeah.
What does he intend to do? I talked a lot probably about Mark Dobretsky in his books.
Yes.
He was talking a lot about prophylactic play. And I think that's something that's very easy to train into your own games. Because, I think there's a tendency when you're playing chess for your ego to take over. And you're kind of like, you're just looking at your own play, and then you start to overlook ideas from your opponent. So I talk a bit about that in the book as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I recognize a lot of the themes from looking. I'm about a third of the way through the book, and I've decided, I was one of the beta testers, so I kind of had to go a little quicker than I would if I were just training it. So I'm kind of taking it a little more slowly because some of the examples are now we've talked about this, or I've talked about this in the review. I think players need to not worry about getting the problems correct all the time. I think that scares some of the weaker, lower rated players away. Is that people who are intermediate or advanced players saying, "Oh, it's very difficult." But I think lower rated players might want to experience that, and if they don't get it right away, they that's okay as long as they learn from it. I guess. What do you think?
I must admit, I'm new to chessable. I don't really know much about chessable.
Okay.
But obviously, there's like a big thing about the trainable variations. Fair enough, but I just think the different ways to approach the book. You can just read the book as it is.
Yes.
There's lots of different. You could just play through the games. Because I think the writing material in itself is enough. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I feel like the writing material in itself is enough to justify it. But you're right. I mean, there are games out there, because, for example, I played in game one, I played against Michael Adams. That was a difficult game. We both overlooked stuff. We both missed stuff. And some of the problems in the game, for example, I said, what should Michael Adams do here? And he gets the move wrong. He's like a 2700 player. So obviously, players at a lower level are going to get that wrong as well. And as you say, it shouldn't really be about that. It should be about whether you're understanding the material. I think that's the key thing. Whether you're really understanding, whether you're taking something from that game, and that's helping you to improve your chess.
Well, I guess people shouldn't be afraid of. Of course, if you're really new to chess, maybe a more basic tactics primer might be more appropriate. But I think anyone who's played in tournaments and is familiar with the basic tactical themes can probably tackle this book. And as long as they're not too worried about their ego, I think, in terms of.
Well, that's it. Maybe I'm thinking some of these guys on Chessable, their egos are so high. You get these easy chessable, trainable variations. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like ridiculous. What's this guy doing? He's deliberately trying to sabotage my chessable rating. I don't know. Did you get a rating?
No, that's the thing. There are no ratings. I mean, you just have a success percentage. Maybe that's something they should look at. But I actually think for learning, it's one thing to compete and have a rating. And I know like chess.com has the ratings for their tactics. But I think for something like this, I think it's kind of one of those things where when I go through that book, and I got this experience when I was reading Kasparov's Test of Time, that a lot of it is was over my head, but I needed to get a taste of it to see, maybe it was encouraging, or maybe someday to play, not maybe at that style even, but even at that level. So I think it's good for people to see. You need to be able to at some point in your development, you're going to need to learn to calculate complicated variations. And why not get a taste of that?
It's interesting you should mention that, because that was one of the first books I probably got to terms with. And you're absolutely right. I looked at that book and I was like, some of the variations in that book. I've spoken to people who've analysed Kasparov, when he was in his prime, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You'd see. It's mind-boggling. But, yeah, I kind of grew up with that. I kind of had these magazines like New in Chess. You have these annotations by Kasparov and Anand, all sorts of people, Tony Miles or whoever. And, a lot of the variations were very difficult. But I think, that's an examination. That's what chess is, a complicated game. It's a complex game. It's probably, it's true. It's probably a course. If you're purely looking at the training side of it, it probably is a course. But that's how I wrote. It probably is a course that's intended maybe for, not beginners, shall we say?
Yeah.
More intermediate to expert players. But I think, that's really how, because yeah, so basically, I did this. I did this right, and I sent it to them. And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but this is like, there's not enough in there. That's, like certain positions, you have to explain what. For example, like the bishop goes to d3.
Right.
I just played bishop d3, and they said, yeah, but why has it gone to d3? Because it's aiming at h7. And that to me was just like, well, self-explanatory, right?
Right.
I don't need to write that in, but obviously, yeah, what they're saying is there's a lot of readers that didn't understand it. So when I first said them, they said this isn't good enough. So they sent in this guy called Gert.
Yep.
Nice guy. He actually came to where I live, and we sat down one day. We said, look, I think you've got a good book, but we need to kind of, really get the material to the stage where people understand what, why that game's in there. They understand, they understand what they're trying to achieve in this chapter. So I think he did a really good job of really giving me some good ideas for the book, and also to try and improve the variations so that, I cut out a lot of variations that were kind of irrelevant. I just kept like the simpler ones, and also with the comments to make it clearer to the reader. Because like you say, a lot of stuff that seems like self-explanatory to me is not necessarily self-explanatory to your reader. And that's something that's a concept that I've struggled to come to terms with. See what I'm saying?
Right. Okay. Let's. I want to pivot a little bit and talk to you. I've heard you on the Perpetual Chess podcast. A very interesting interview with Ben Johnson, and just wanted to shift. Actually, before I shift to, I'd like to ask you about your current playing career and how that's going. But let me ask you a couple quick. I want to, just so we don't forget. I had a couple questions from the viewers, and I wanted to ask those to you,
Sure.
and maybe you could give us a little insight. First question was, if a player becomes an international master or a titled player, should he try to become a professional chess player? Very open-ended question. So what do you say to that?
Well, that's a good question, because I became an international master in 1997. I was 21 years of age. It took me till 2005 till I got the Grandmaster final.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, do I regret that? Do I regret becoming a professional chess player? Well, actually, last year I was playing a tournament in Scotland, and it sort of occurred to me, because I'd got this job actually a few months before that, and I got the sack, and it was just like really humiliating experience. The whole thing was just horrible. And then, yeah, I got this. So I played this tournament in Scotland, and it just, dawned on me how, I was kind of excited to play this tournament, and and it's like all the best experiences of my life were through playing chess. All the most interesting experiences of my life were through playing chess. So I think, but on the minus side, which I've talked about, like my writing, and a lot of people in chess, they don't talk about this, is that, yeah, you're going to struggle for money. I mean,
Yeah.
The money in chess is not good. International master is not good enough to make a living from playing chess.
From purely playing chess without coaching and writing?
Probably not good enough to make a living. So you're probably going to have to do stuff like a lot of writing, a lot of coaching. And if you enjoy that, then sure.
Okay.
I mean, I coach a school now, and I only do that one school a week, and I probably get more pleasure out of seeing them improve than I do my own chess.
Okay.
What I was saying earlier, I think if you're going to be like a good coach as well, I think it helps to play. And a lot of people, say that I think they get a bit lazy. It is painful to play chess. But I mean, I played a tournament, say the other day. That was also in Scotland, and I messed up the first round. I was so angry, and I was like fuming, that I messed up that game.
Oh.
and you know, you think like chess, like when you mess up, when you draw, or you know, that game you should have won, or when you lose. Last October, I was about 24/70. I was kind of stuck in a rut.
Okay.
But I had this dream where I was sort of like, I had this sort of like woman was telling me you're going to have a heart attack if you don't, you know, improve your circulation. I was like, what the hell is that all about? So I'm kind of like one of these superstitious people, you know, listen to rubbish.
So this was a dream you had, like, while you were sleeping, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, you normally tend to have to be sleeping to have dreams.
Well, I didn't know if it was like a not a hallucination, but
hallucination. Yeah, probably was. I sort of woke up, my heart was like pounding. I was kind of overweight because I sort of got into the whole chess thing. You know, you go to tournaments and you have a few beers.
Yeah.
And you're kind of going through the motions. I think really for the last 15, 20 years, I've kind of gone through the motions with chess.
Oh.
Which is kind of sad. It's almost like the social side of chess is more important than the actual playing side. Whereas now I kind of realise that, you know, you get complacent because you get to a certain level. You know, I got to GM, you get complacent. You know you can maintain whatever level, like 24/50 or whatever, just going through the motions. I think, well, hang on, that's not good enough. I know I can do better than that. So why not at least try? Now, the financial difference, it actually comes back to what I was saying earlier about being a professional player. The financial difference between being a 24/50 player and a 2500 player is almost non-existent. Other than that, I could say, well, I've won my last 3 tournaments. I'm equal first, or clear first in my last 3 tournaments, which I haven't done for many years, you know. So you're likely to win a slightly better prize. But in terms of conditions or whatever, it makes no difference. And that's why a lot of people are stuck in that kind of complacency zone, because I think, well, if I get to if I get to 2500 rather than 24/50, well, it literally makes no difference, or very little difference to my bank balance.
So for some players, it's not necessarily worth the effort if they're not motivated to do the work otherwise.
Exactly. So they get to GM, and that's a massive motivation. Because when you start out playing chess, you're like, what's the... Well, firstly, I want to be world champion. Then you start to realise, well, hang on, I'm not good enough to be world champion. So what's the next goal? Well, the next goal is to become grandmaster.
Right.
You know, but you become grandmaster, and then you think, well, where am I going to go from here? Because I already know I'm not going to become world champion.
So I got a couple more questions I want to move to, because I want to be respectful of your time as well. Really enjoying our conversation here. So one of the viewers asked a question about and I guess part of this is what the book tackles, about thought process, and I know I would encourage them to check out the book on Chessable, and we'll have a link to that in the description below. But do you have is there a specific process that you have? And I know different authors have different answers for this. And again, keep in mind the general viewers sort of 15, let's say 1200 to 1800 rating. So is there a general thought process you would recommend, or as opposed to maybe one that you use? I mean, how did that develop over time for you?
What you mean, thought process when you're at the board?
At the board, choosing a move. And again, I think the book would help people answer some of those questions. But I guess if there's a way to summarize, is there a specific thought process you follow, or is it more something that kind of comes to more intuitive?
I think a lot of it comes through playing. Like if you play a lot, because I said to this guy the other day, he was criticising himself. This guy I coached online, and he was criticising himself, and he was saying, "Oh, my calculation is so terrible." I said, "Look, Peter, you're being too harsh on yourself, really. You don't play tournaments, if you don't play." But I played a tournament the other day, and, I could tell that I was rusty. I wasn't really so I think a lot of it is playing. Like, if you play a lot and you analyse those games, then you kind of understand why you're making those decisions, and you start to see more possibilities in your own games. And that opens you up for when you play again. But in terms of specific thought process at the board, what I tend to do is you know, I tend to rely a lot on my intuition. So
Okay.
if I see a move, my general thought process will be I'll analyse the first move that comes into my head.
Okay.
And if it works, then I'll play it. Obviously, I'll look at other candidate moves as well. But I say, well, if instinctive move is the move that works, I'll play it. But calculation is there to back up your intuition. Is the point of trying to make.
Maybe they. But do you think when you're looking at a candidate, you're probably, I wonder if subconsciously have you already looked at a few and kind of rejected them right away, or how? I guess I'm kind of trying to piece apart what you're thinking internally when you're looking at a position.
Yeah, I mean, say for example, you had a really sharp, complex position. Like, what is your thought process in that position? For example, I had a game the other day and very sharp position, but I kind of like I just played too quick.
Okay.
You know, and I talk about that in the book. Actually, I talk about key moments, understanding key moments,
right?
Critical moments, like when to think, and I think that is a lot connected to playing. You know, getting to the kind of the mode of playing a lot. If you play a lot, then and you analyse your games, then you kind of understand, well, actually, this is a critical moment. And then you kind of get a feel for like when the critical moments arrive better. But yeah, the whole thought process thing is very important. And yeah, I tend to go a lot with my initial instinct, but I don't tend to calculate that deeply. You know, so a lot of it's about calculating the first 4 or 5 moves. Sometimes I'll go deep into a line, you know, if necessary. You know, there's no surefire way to calculate by it. You know, there's no, it's not a sticking plaster type thing. I think you just got to sort of like do it a lot, and as you say, build up experience how to handle certain type of positions.
Yeah, no, and I think things like solving problems and you know, actually, your book I think is a great. I don't mean to. Yes, I am plugging the book, but it is something that I think is very helpful with that, because I think someone can say, well, my thought was
give a 5-star review on Chesapeake.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I think it's something where someone could say, okay, you should find the candidates, then you should calculate candidate A and candidate B. You know, kind of the Kotov, tree. But I think a lot of it needs to be experienced. You know, you need to say, okay.
The moves reflect your play. I mean, I read an interesting thing about Petrosian, and he said, you know, they were given some position, and they said, oh, he just played moves because he wanted to play them. He wasn't worried about whether they looked ugly or whether they were bad. He just played them because I like that move. It's almost like you're giving your ego full reign. I found that quite interesting.
Huh.
You know, and I think that kind of reflects, a lot like the way Kotov tried to explain it. It's like, it's like a very mechanical way, which I don't think chess players think like that. You know, a lot of this emotion at the board and I mean, not allowing yourself to become unsettled. And sometimes, you know, you'll be sitting there analysing a position and you'll get affected by your opponent because your opponent will sit there looking bored.
Do
you know what I mean? And it's almost like rushing you into making a response. So I think that's something that's overlooked, really. Like I say, people don't talk about it. Because I think one of the things Kotov says is quite good, which is check your variations. Now, I think I talk about that a little bit in the book, really, when I'm talking about. This is the second chapter. I'm talking really about checklists.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm talking really about the process of calculation and how you need to be careful. You know, I'll play devil's advocate when I'm calculating variations. So, you know, is there something wrong with that move? Because it's very easy just to get complacent when you're calculating. That should be okay. But you need to be ultra critical when you're playing chess. You need to be very, very objective. And I think that's something that's very important. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that actually brings me to my the last viewer question, and then we'll wrap up maybe with a couple more. Is just one of my viewers asked about, a lot of beginner, he's more towards the beginner, intermediate level. And
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
a lot of his calculation, he's solving a lot of tactics problems. And so
Mm.
besides that, what else can he be doing besides, I'm assuming, playing and solving tactics problems? What else can he be doing to improve? And then I have a follow-up question that he asked as well. But why don't you answer that one first, and then I'll ask his second question.
I think what he could do to improve, just buy all of my stuff that's online. No,
We'll put links below.
I think there's so many ways to improve that. I think that's why you've seen a massive jump in people exponentially improving. Now you see so many. Like every time I play an open now, you're playing against most of your parents. You're playing against kids born like 2002, 2003, 2004. That's as a massive far more. I think it's much harder to become a grandmaster now than it was back then, because when I was playing open tournaments probably like 10 years ago, when I became a grandmaster, there weren't as many juniors. I think it's much easier now because you can play a lot online. I think computers as well. Look at how computers play. A lot of people now take a lot from Alpha Zero with pawn sacrifices and so on. But how can he improve? I think one important thing, which has been stressed for many years, is to look at your own game. I don't know if this guy has a computer, but annotate your own games. Do it without an engine, because with an engine, the tendency is you switch on the engine, and the engine will basically
on here. So, okay, so yeah, well, yeah, definitely something. Studying your own games and annotating your own games is something I've talked a lot about on this channel. And let me ask you the second question here, because this is something that I've kind of debated back and forth with a few of the viewers. Is what's the importance of using? Everyone's using their computers now and their phones, looking at the graphics on the screen. But what's the importance of using a physical board in your training, or at least parts of your training?
No, I don't think it's. I think it's actually doesn't really matter. I mean, what I used to do, I used to read chess books, like chess books, and then you'd sit them down and you'd play through the games, and that's how I got good. Really, I used to play through New in Chess magazines, and but sometimes the books were quite thick, and to get such a tedious process to actually reset the pieces, and then so you could argue that the internet has improved. But I think you could make arguments for either. You could say if you've got a board, that can help you as well. I think a mixture is ideal, really. To be honest with you, Brian, I think use the internet as a tool.
Yeah.
But if you don't have to have a physical board, but if you can have a physical board as well, I use a physical board when I'm studying, because I think it keeps you a little bit sane rather than staring at the computer all the time.
Right. Well, I guess it depends on what you're doing. For example, if you're doing a bunch of tactics problems, I just think it's tedious to try to. If it takes you 2 minutes to solve the problem, and then you have to do that you're only going to be able to do a couple problems.
Although I've got like a problem book, and actually, that was part of my training a few months ago. I get this old problems book out, and I found if you set the position up on the board at home, you probably get a lot more into it.
Okay, so
then you would on the computer, because I think the whole tendency, your whole outlook for the computer is kind of throwaway. Everything online or everything on the computer is a little bit like a throwaway experience.
Right. Maybe people are more too casual when it's not
too casual. But if you actually gone to the problem of setting the position up on the board, you're very focused on that. If you've got a position on your computer or something, somebody's texting you on Facebook, or somebody's like some tweet just appeared, you got some YouTube video you want to watch, suddenly you just get distracted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, definitely.
Whereas if you're completely got that, that's probably the biggest advantage of having it on an actual board, is that you're completely focused on that board.
Okay, so we're kind of middle of the road. So if you have the time to set it up, it's beneficial, but not necessary if you can focus And if you have, if you, you know, if you,
Yeah, it all depends on the person. Really. I think you could make an argument for either.
well, I really appreciate your time and hope
Yeah,
that
no
people
problem, mate.
will,
I've enjoyed it. Yeah, I
yeah,
think, yeah.
hope people will check out your book. Is there anything, any last words you want to share with?
Yeah, check out my Ginger GM course, how to win chess tournaments as well, if you can, because I think that's struggling.
Okay,
So,
we'll put the links to that in the description below. So if
yeah,
you guys want to check that out, really enjoyed our conversation today. And hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. If you want to check out Grandmaster Gormally's channel, you can click over there, and we will have links to his some of his other work down below. And if you want to support the Better Chess Training channel, there's also a link below to my Patreon page. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.